Okay, we have started the broadcast here, the webinar. We are now we're going to be recording as well. So Gail will kick us off, and we'll get on our way.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our fourth in a series of talent and workforce related webinars this year, hosted by GSDC, or the Greater St. Cloud Development Corporation. We are glad you joined us and decided to take your lunch hour to spend it with us. We've got some excellent material to share. We've got lots of experts in the room, so we hopefully you will enjoy the next 60 minutes of our discussion on retaining your rock stars. As Luke mentioned, the PowerPoint will be sent out to you afterwards, so no need to worry about scrambling to take a bunch of notes. Just sit back and listen, and hopefully you will gain some great ideas, suggestions as to how you can look at your organization, as to how you can maybe enhance how you are helping develop those rock stars within your team. So also just as a reminder, this, as I mentioned, is our last webinar for the year. So you will receive a survey after the webinar is completed. And one of the questions, and really the most important one, is for us is to, do you find value in these webinars, and what topics would you like us to work on as we start to think about 2019? So with that, I want to introduce my partners today in presenting this information. For those of you that don't know me, first off, I should back up. I am Gail Cruikshank. I am Talent Director with the Greater St. Cloud Development Corporation. And with me today, I have Allison and Luke. So if they would each introduce themselves, and then we'll go forward with the webinar.
Go ahead, Allison.
I'm Allison Wagoner. I'm the HR manager over at DCI in St. Cloud, Minnesota. We are a manufacturing company and have approximately 200 employees here and about 50 out in California.
All right. And I'm Luke Reardon with Data Marketing. If you've been on these webinars before, you've heard from me. But happy to have everybody attending and joining us for this awesome webinar, Retaining Your Rock Stars. Such an important topic in today's world. So.
Well, it is, and as Luke flips over to the PowerPoint itself, as I think all of you know, that again, attracting those stars and those rock stars is really only half the battle. And so many people say, well, I hired all these great people, but then what am I doing to grow them and retain them? And again, they need to have that constant growth and development if they're going to remain on your team. In the very competitive work environment that we have, you can't just assume that I was able to secure that top talent. I need to make sure that I'm retaining them, and that's what we're going to focus on today. So with that, we will get started. I will mention too, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please fill them in on the chat bar, and we will answer those questions at the end of the presentation, just to ensure we get through all of the material for you. So with that, as we jump into today's webinar, the first slide really talks about the importance of talent. And I'm just going to read this because I think it's critical to set the stage as to why we're spending time on this topic. Today's marketplace is incredibly competitive in every single industry around the globe. And the difference between success and failure is talent, period. And I think that really just emphasizes the importance of talent in the workplace. And again, if you are going to grow and be successful, you need to invest in your talent, and you can't just assume that they're there, they're doing their job, I'm going to get my job done. It has to be a collaborative effort together. So as we move on to slide 3, we wanted to highlight, as today, this is what we're going to work on. We're going to talk about, we've spent time in the past talking about recruiting those rock stars. And if you want any references back, we have all of our past webinars are on our website, greaterstcloudjobspot.com, under webinars. And so you can always refer back to those. We spent some time talking about the candidate experience and how critical that is. And again, really that HR role and how strategic they need to be in really challenging the opportunities to grow your business. So, and then the next thing we wanted to touch on is giving rock stars a firm foundation. As they get started, it is not just, okay, Susie started, she's in her chair, she's off and doing what she needs to do. We need to make sure we give her a firm foundation to make sure that she does get started in the right place, as well as continue to see opportunity. And then thirdly, we want to identify our rock stars, and then lastly, retain those rock stars. So retaining rock stars starts at the very beginning of the employment process, and you can't wait until that employee is considering to leave before we start talking about how do we retain those folks. So there's a move into the guts. We want to get going into the topic here and really talk about retaining right away. So with that, I want to actually turn it over to the next slide. We're going to talk a little bit about, oops, sorry, back up. We're on to the poll. See that? I just can't read my notes. I just have to go with the flow. So with that, the one thing I want to say is, as you know, as the poll is coming up here, we want to get your input as to what caused your last rock star to leave. I think you can all identify somebody on your team that you really wish you wouldn't have lost. And could you have impacted them to change their mind and stay? And so we wanted just to see what the thoughts were out there as far as what's causing that rock star to leave. And as you are completing that poll, one thing that I want to stress is, as you look at your staff, every single person needs that individual attention. You can't just lump people together that, okay, this group I need to do this for, this group I need to do this for. Every single person is unique on your team, and you can't assume that I have one plan in place that's going to fit everybody. So as you can see the results coming up here on the survey, the leader is work-life balance as far as percentages, but there's a lot of close input as well. Lack of opportunity, I guess, is looking as number 2, and then benefits and pay are coming in as a tie for 3rd. So again, that whole thought about everybody leaves me for a quarter isn't necessarily the case. There's other things that are driving that decision as far as if they're going to venture out to a new opportunity. So.
Yeah, if you haven't taken the poll yet, we're at about 50% of the attendees who have taken it. It'd be great to get to that 75% measure there. So if you, hopefully you're in front of a screen where you can be able to fill that out and answer it. It'd be greatly appreciated if you can, too. So, all right. But there we go. Hit the 75% mark I was hoping for. I appreciate those latecomers.
So again, it really does stress that work-life balance is really shot out in front as far as the percentages. So I would ask you, as you're listening to us today, think about how you as your organization is approaching work-life balance. And again, that's not the only answer, but again, certainly a strong one as far as what you guys are telling us as to why your last rock star left.
And it is one of our topics today on the top 10 reasons of how to keep them. So Absolutely. It's something we are going to address on how it's impacted all our organizations too.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. All right. So 80% of you voted. Thank you very much. And we will close out the poll now and get back to our presentation. So you'll be able to see the screen again momentarily. Let me just check everything's good. Yes, and we are back on to the slides.
So as we think about why this topic, why do we talk about it? We just listed here a variety of reasons that I think are really, that do impact your business. I mean, simply the cost of turnover. When you lose someone, there's a huge cost and a time delay. So loss of company knowledge. Again, you are losing those experts that knew the key things as to what was needed to be done to either make that decision, process that project, whatever it is. And so again, we talk to, are you always sharing knowledge across lines? So you always have many people that know every aspect of your business. Interruption of operations. Simply, if you lose some key people, it's going to take you some time if you haven't given thought ahead of time as to who would be the backfill, who's my backup person, who do I need to continue to train. So turnover leads to more turnover. If you lose a key player on your team, there's a good chance that 2 or 3 or 4 others are going to follow right out that door. Because again, some people are true leaders within your organization, and what they do could impact what others will do. Goodwill of the company, and then obviously regaining efficiency. And so, there's a lot of reasons why this is so important and the impact of that retention of your staff. So with that, as we jump on to the next slide, again, as you might remember from me talking in the past, establishing your employer brand is really the most critical aspect. And as you see the quote there by Steve Jobs, I think it's very, very appropriate. And again, it really stresses the fact that everyone needs to be engaged in the people part of the business, be it your CEO, be it your HR, be it your newest employee. So everybody has to take a vested interest in establishing your employer brand, improving your processes, and invest in leadership development. Those are things that Kelly Hansen and I spoke about at our last webinar as far as the importance of that HR strategic partner. And these are really the three things that you need to think about that we've talked about in the past when we're talking about recruiting. And now we want to talk about, once you've recruited those folks, how do you start to onboard them and really make them feel comfortable and show them the opportunities they have to grow. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Allison to talk a little bit about the next stages.
And we truly believe that onboarding or orientation, whatever you're going to call it at your organization, is key to the success of your employees. They need to understand what your employment is about. What is your organization for? What is your brand? What is your goal? They need to understand all that at the very beginning so that they can become more effective. Outline their expectations. What are you looking for them? We had an accountant come from another organization and found that their organizations their goals were very different than our goals were at DCI. So you need to outline those expectations and not assume that everybody knows what's good for your organization. Make them part of the team and make them welcome. These go together, but we actually start this at the hiring process. We want them to know what we're about. We want them to know the personal side of us. We want to make it a little warm and fuzzy. We want them to know that we need them and that they are part of our team. We want to do whatever we can to support them, from having a flexible workplace to giving what they need to succeed in their job. Some people like different forms of technology. We let people choose their own technology for their job so that they can get what they want to do. Stand-up desks. Simple things that you just don't even think about are really important to that onboarding expectation. At one of my first jobs, first day, first hour was, let's go pick out the artwork for your office. And they had this whole room filled with artwork, and it was going to be yours. And it was the way that you felt welcome. This is now my office. It's going to be fun for me to be here. So that's a really part of that onboarding and making you feel welcome process.
And if I can just add in one thing, I had the opposite experience in one of my first jobs along the way, where they didn't even know they weren't prepared for me when I was coming. They didn't have my desk set up. They didn't have anything prepared. And again, that is the biggest way to, really put on a negative impression, and really an important process that you need to pre-plan. You've got a new associate starting, get the group together that's going to make sure that everything is all in line for those folks. And so you don't know how important those little things are. Like, even, do you have a stapler on your desk? Do you have, the phone set up with your number ready to go? Do you have your email account set up? I mean, all those things, it's just critical, very elementary things, but it's amazing how many companies don't do that work on the front end, and then they wonder why people are quick to leave.
I once worked with a gentleman who believed in throwing people to the wolves and seeing if they survived. And obviously, based on how we've put this together, that is not what we believe. And it very rarely works. I mean, people like to be challenged, yes, but they like to have that support and feel part of the team also. The next part we're going to talk about is, how do you identify your rock stars? It's hard to do sometimes, and it's not always very obvious at the beginning. I also like to say that when I'm doing this at work, I like to identify the people that may not survive also. You need to be willing to do the hard part of your job and say, maybe this isn't the best fit. Rarely is it an individual issue. It's usually just a fit issue. But for identifying the rock star, rock stars usually make quality job one. They're not just getting their work done, they're making sure their work is done right, and they're anticipating the next move. They're always growing, they're always developing, they're always trying to look to see what can they do to make this better. They're focused a lot of times on the organization versus just themselves. And I see that every day where we work, the people who want to make sure that everything's going to fit together. We are an engineered to order workplace, so our engineers need a lot of data. They need a lot of information, especially from our sales teams. We have a group that works together to make sure that everybody has what they need and they can anticipate those next moves. The rock stars are the people who are really there making sure you can anticipate.
And the ones that are really in the know, I call it, are you sharing everything with your team as far as, do they all know what goes on in every aspect of the company? I mean, I was at a business visit just last week, and they have a huge board that shows absolutely everything, their metrics, their mission, their vision, their values, what each group is doing, how they're each progressing according to their goal. So everybody really is vested into what's going on with this organization, and it makes you want to be one of those rock stars if you're a part of making that happen.
The last thing that's on this slide is talking about being a fearless decision makers. They step up and they make decisions when they need to. DCI has followed the lean model for a long time, and a lot of times what we talk about is fail fast, learn lots. So sometimes even if they're making a wrong decision, they're making a decision so that we can move forward. And you see that more with decision makers and people that are rock stars. The people who aren't willing to make a decision, aren't willing to take that extra step, aren't willing to put their reputation on the line, oftentimes they're not the rock stars in your organization. We alluded to this earlier. A lot of times they understand why. They see how their work fits for the rest of the organization. They understand how they're creating more opportunities for the greater good of the organization, and that's really important. We're not islands. We all fit together, and so it's really important that they understand why they're doing what they're doing. And that's critical in any organization. Some people just get their work done, but they don't know why they're doing their job. They're self-directed and self-motivated. They take those extra steps to do stuff. You're going to find out later on in this presentation that this does not mean that you don't have to give them that pat on the back every once in a while. They do like recognition. They just are doing it for themselves, though. They tend to be very cool under pressure. It doesn't get to them. They're willing to take these risks and understand that if it doesn't work out, they're going to move on and be able to survive and get a different solution. They also have very good people skills. You're going to find that they are very good at working with other people and understanding what other people bring to the table. They're not an island. They understand that we're all in this together. And I think that's really important in this type of environment today. Teamwork is where everything fits.
Well, and I think it's critical that if you have these, what we call rock stars or high performance folks, and maybe they are that creative mindset, as an employer, you need to have your mind open to listening to that very creative idea. Maybe it's something that's a little bit different than what you've been accustomed to in the past. And again, many of employers are tendency, well, this is what this job does. This is what we want to do. You just do this. Well, you're not going to allow your rock stars to flourish if you don't let them expand on looking for that crazy idea, trying something different, and being open to at least vetting it out to see if it's an opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's, Allison, just to piggyback off of the point you made there is, it's not just about, a rock star does not just have high IQ. Right. They've got high EQ and emotional intelligence along with it. And that's such a key thing for us at Data as well.
Right. And it's important that a lot of times the other thing rock stars have that other people don't identify is they know what their weaknesses are. Mm-hmm. They oftentimes know what other people bring to the table so that they can use that to the advantage of the organization rather than thinking that they have to do it all.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Over to me. This is Luke speaking, if you forgot about me. Just got... just to talk about one of my favorite topics right here. I'm glad I got paired with this point here. Coaching and mentoring is actually a value of data marketing. So we've got our core value set, and coaching and mentoring is one of our core values that we promote within the office. And often are encouraging that in every way possible, no matter what position you're in at Data. We constantly want people to coach and mentor because everybody brings their own experiences and everybody has certain strengths and everybody should know their weaknesses. So you should always be open to this type of activity. The unique thing that we do at Data, and it's something I love to talk about, is on a quarterly basis during our performance reviews. How do we live out our values? Well, one of the ways that we make sure we're holding ourselves accountable to our values is we build those into our performance reviews, and our team leads will rate team members, either a 1, 3, or a 5 on if they're being a great advocate or a great role model when it comes to our values. And coaching and mentoring is one of those that is always on that list. And so if we're doing it as we're supposed to, that's going to be a 3. If you're excelling and you're being a great role model with it, you're going to get a 5. And if you need some work on that, you're going to get rated a 1. So I think it's a great thing that we do at Data to really hold people accountable to the values that we have here, because we're in such a constant we're in an industry that's constantly changing, that coaching and mentoring is so key as we develop our team members and grow. So really key thing that I would encourage, you don't have to have our same values, but creating a culture is really the key thing that I'm advocating for here, where everybody is a coach and mentor. And Allison, not to put you on the spot on this one, but I think DCI, the industry that you're in, having such a variety of business of positions, they're not all office jobs, right? And so, how does DCI go about creating a culture where you've got a varying variety from an engineer to an accountant to somebody who's maybe welding?
Well, I think first of all, we do have a lot of welders. We have 125 people out in our shop who are our welder fabricators, finishers, machine operators. One of the things in an engineered to order environment is that perhaps engineers are doing a really good job at designing something, but that can't be fabricated. So our welders, fabricators have to be willing to come back to our engineers and say, this won't quite work because of this. Have you thought about? So there is a dynamic that goes back both ways. And I think that's critical in any mentoring relationship, is that you realize the relationship is both ways. Oftentimes somebody is designated a mentor or a coach, and they're learning just as much from their employee as they're giving to that employee, depending on what values and everything they bring forward. So that's critically important. I think out in our shop, especially when we get people from the tech college, which is probably our primary stream of employees, they are set up with a mentor on every single project. In an engineered to order fabrication shop, every design is different, everything is new, everything is unique. We don't get a lot of these repeat orders. So they have to be able to remember this from time to time, and they have to depend on these mentors to have that information. On the flip side, they're bringing things from the tech college that maybe we haven't tried before, and so it has to go both ways. In the office, those situations are often a little better defined because we have senior design engineers going down to junior design engineers, and they're learning both all the way through it. We have interns that we use from the tech college and from St. Cloud State, and they are assigned people to be their mentors and lead them during their internships, and we do that in a much more focused manner also. But
I think the key is that mentorship looks different for each and every associate, and I think taking the time to assess and then reassess. I mean, maybe even if, I'm sure that you've had scenarios happen that you've partnered somebody together and it hasn't worked out, and again, as a leader of the organization, identifying that and saying, okay, I need to get Luke a different mentor, or he would work much more effective in this environment with this person instead of this one. And again, we all want different things as far as mentoring too. I mean, I think we've talked about, again, our newer, more inexpensive or inexperienced employees will want a different form of mentorship than maybe somebody, that's been very established within the organization. But we all continue to grow, and we all want different forms of mentorship. So.
And you need to be able to think outside the box. In fact, we have people that we have actually hired mentors outside to help with some of the skills that they're not getting inside the organization. They have very strong skills that we need, desire, and really admire, but they need something a little extra, so we go outside and we get what we need. But those mentor and coaching programs are absolutely essential.
Yeah, and I make it as real as possible. I think it's one thing to say you coach and mentor, but to measure it and to see your progress along the way is key. Otherwise, it's just nice fluffy words, until you actually put a measurement around it.
So as you know, I just want to jump in. We are going through our top 10. We kind of slid right into that. So we will go through top 10 guidelines to retaining rock stars. So we are going, now we're on to number 9. But again, these are just key elements that we've identified as a group that we think are critical for you to, as you are working with those rock stars.
Develop a plan for growth is number 9. Investing in the growth and development of employees is essential. And we do believe this. From what I said during the last segment on mentoring, going outside and finding it, finding people inside the organization that can develop and grow, finding resources that you can use. We have found that in St. Cloud there is an almost unlimited resources for helping you develop growth and development plans for your employees. From the technical college to St. Cloud State to outside coaches and developers and consultants, there is a whole lot of resources to help you with the growth and development of your employees. And this is going to be exceptionally individual for the employees. However, saying that, we this year have a focus on customer service. So we are developing a plan with St. Cloud Technical and Community College on customer service, both inside and outside. And they're working with us to develop a plan for all our office employees so that they can grow and develop in that idea and understand that your internal customers are as important as our external customers. So that idea that we all have to plan and grow, sometimes we all have to be on the same playing field. So we have the same expectations of each other, but it still is growth and development of all the employees to move forward. What have you found at Data?
Yeah, it's on top of that, it's finding and listening, I think, to the employees too, to find out what their specific, what they need help in. Going back to your comments on identifying weaknesses. One of the things that we do is use strength finders at Data to not only know people's strengths, but also understand how those strengths can sometimes have weaknesses as well. One of my top 5 strengths is, I'm strategic, I'm visionary, and I've also got relator. And so sometimes I'm talking way too far, in the future, and I'm not providing the details, and I'm only talking to a small group of people because I'm a relator. And that's just how I naturally operate. And so it's great for me to know that my strengths can sometimes be a weakness. And so we talk through that in the fact that I need to make sure I'm talking to a lot more people than just my close network, or my perceived close network. And then also to really identify that I can then get focused on, okay, well, how do I get more focused on the details, learn more about the operations of the business? And so I'm able to apply and learn and fulfill that by knowing my weaknesses. And we do that with every level of employee too.
Well, and I think that points out a really good idea, which is growth and development is essential for everybody from the top down. They see this as, I'm always growing, I'm always trying to expand. And if they see that from the CEO down to the HR, down to everybody, that becomes one of those things that is essential to the culture of the company.
Absolutely.
Encouraging positivity. If I have anything in this whole entire session that is my primary goal, it's focusing on solutions rather than problems. So I try to encourage positivity. I try to encourage on what's going right. Even if a major blow up has occurred, how are we going to solve it? Let's not sit and point fingers. Let's not sit and find the problems. You may have to do that later, and it may be necessary, but it doesn't have to be the focus. So it turns out that most of the studies show that rock stars really like positivity too. They like to focus on the solution. They like to focus on areas that they can find more opportunities. So that's something that we try to do here. We try to focus on that type of thing and get people to leave the finger pointing at the door.
Well, and I think that speaks to, again, I
Mhm.
want to be a part of an organization that encourages positivity. I don't want to be continually coming into work and somebody's pointing a finger or putting blame or negative. I mean, again, that positive environment, again, makes people want to stay. And that's what we're all striving to do.
And we have found with some of our rock stars that if they see problems, sometimes they are disappointed because here's this issue and I had nothing to do with it. Why do I have to deal with all these problems? And we just try to focus, well, this happens, how can we solve it? How can you be part of the solution? Rather than, yes, we have to move on, you know?
Absolutely.
So I think it's something that we really have to focus on at all times. Communication. So my actual title is HR Safety and Communications Manager because I decided somewhere down there in my career that communication was much more important than some of the other areas. Not saying it's more important than safety or human resources, but it's equal to, if nothing else. I think communication is essential to any organization, from our quarterly meetings that we have that we're showing what the company's doing, what's coming next, how we've done in the past, to those day-to-day communications on what's happening next. What do we need? Why do we need it? And what do I know and what do I need? Sometimes we forget to communicate what we need. You know, we focus on, this is what I've got. Now, what can you do for me? We need to do that. We need to outline it and say, okay, I don't have this. I don't have the answers here. And communicate, this is what I expect. This is what I need from you. So oftentimes rock stars think they have to know it all, and they don't.
And I was just going to add, I don't know how many times I've heard people say that they left a place of employment out of some very simple lack of communication. It's something that could have so easily been communicated, decided upon, worked through together. Again, why did we invest in that person if we're going to lose them out of a simple communication or lack thereof? So again, even if you don't know the answers to Allison's point, or even if it's an answer you don't want to share, still sharing that and being 100% open to your team is going to really, again, make those people feel they're a part of a team. And yes, there's some tough days ahead, but we also know that we have, you know, future that we're looking at or working towards it. Is again, make me a part of the team that I want to stay and invest in the growth and development.
Yeah, the point around transparency and communication, I think, is key. When I get the most positive feedback when talking to the team, it's when sharing their failures, where we made a mistake, where we didn't hit the goal. But this is what we're going to do to achieve the next goal, and we're going to stay positive and move forward. That's when people come up to me and say, "Thanks for sharing that," you know, because it's not all blue sky and sunshine.
Right.
I mean,
right.
We're in a great economy. There you go. So.
I was dealing with a vendor yesterday, and they had made a pretty significant error. And I had asked them to call me back and ask what had happened and what were we going to do to guarantee. So they told me what happened, and then we focused on what we were going to do to guarantee that it wouldn't happen again. And we got done with the conversation, and she said, I was really scared because I had you in a focus on this. And I said, I'm more focused on how are we going to make sure it's never going to happen again.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's what we want to do.
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Okay, moving on to number 6, acknowledge strengths and weaknesses. We have talked about this a little bit already through our conversation. So, and as Allison had pointed out, it's so easy to always focus on those rock star strengths. They're just excelling at this. They've just got it. But again, everybody has a weakness and everybody has opportunities. And so again, we owe it to each of our associates, and particularly our rock stars, to know what opportunities they have to grow and continue to develop, to again take them to that next level, or maybe to receive some information and opportunity to work within a different part of the business that they've never had a chance to work in before. I think the companies that do it best are the ones that they get their employees knowledgeable and engaged in all aspects of their business in one way, shape, or form. So even if you're in a situation where I don't have a promotion opportunity for my associate here, but how am I going to keep them? Well, it doesn't always have to be an upward promotion. It could be an expansion of duties. It can be a different responsibility. It can just be have them as a subject matter expert on a certain project. I mean, it can look so different. So again, you don't have to get hung up on only moving people upward. Again, recognizing what their strengths and opportunities are really helps you really expand that associate to their fullest potential. So moving on to number 5, that would be Luke. So there you go.
Yeah, work-life balance. This is another favorite topic of mine to talk about, and something that at Data we've grasped onto early on. We offer employees, after they hit about the 2 to 3 months start, the option to work from home 3 days per week. Now, I know not every organization can do this. It's probably difficult to have a welder work from home sometimes.
It would be very difficult.
Just as an example. So I want to say that understanding that this doesn't work for all positions, but there's a lot of things you can do to make their lives easier, which are some things we can go over now. But in our case, if you do have the ability to offer people to work from home, to me it just became a simple decision. I'm giving people time in their lives when it came down to this, and boy do they appreciate it the most. It is when we look at our benefit reviews and we include this as a benefit in their package, we remind people that they save on average, if you commute 15 minutes to work, which is pretty typical for probably a St. Cloud commute, depending where you're coming from, but you'll save about 2 weeks worth of work time over a year period. So even a 15-minute commute will, if you add it up, it saves about 2 weeks of time, which is just an incredible number. And also, you give people back their time in their day too, when they might be needing to take that time and do it on personal. Bring that over to personal things like going to the doctor or whatever it might need. And that's one area that flexible hours is something we always encourage as well too, where you might be able to offer a little bit more flexibility around that, even if a person does need to be physically present at their office. One of the challenges with this, it doesn't always mean remote work, but one of the challenges that with remote work is maintaining a culture, because so many great cultural experiences happen in person. And so one of the challenges that we've faced through this process of allowing employees, and sometimes employees will work 100% remote. We've got 4 out of our 32 employees that are 100% remote, is how do you maintain a great culture when you don't see people? So we're using Google Hangouts, screen sharing as much as possible. And then we use an online chat tool called Slack, which is just how I described it. And we have our culture infused and our values infused into that online chat program. So we're constantly providing recognition where recognition is due, providing feedback via this platform, and we try to do it face to face as much as possible, even though we're not there physically. And then the key message that would tie closely to the situation where you can't have somebody be remote 100% is to find out, talk to them, learn about their personal lives. Maybe there's an area where you can add to their life rather than their work environment. And that to me has been the most valuable thing, not only from just, hey, we're giving somebody a great benefit, but it shows the employee that you actually care about their life, which is way more important than their work. That's one of the things that we say we work to live at Data, not live to work. Family always comes first. And so if you can find ways, get to know those people, you're probably, if you're thinking about, well, I don't know what I would do beyond letting them work remotely that would allow them more flexibility and time, you probably need to get to know the employees better from a personal level. So do your due diligence there. And that's really the key point that I want to make with this one is don't just go out and make a program that is a work-life balance program without getting to know what the individual needs of your employee base are. And I think it'll be rather obvious once you do and collect that information there. Any comments on that from Gail or Allison?
No, I agree. It's different for every individual. One of the things about being the HR manager is your door is always open, literally. And so it's hard to get some of your project type stuff work done. So I used to come in on Sundays a lot, and actually I still come in on Sundays a lot. And I like it because there's absolutely nobody there. I mean that in the nicest, sweetest, kindest way possible. But I get a lot of work done. And it bothered a couple of employees because they consider Sunday to be a purely family day. And I said, and that works for you, it doesn't work for me. And you
Right.
need to remember that, that I'm doing it for a reason and you have other reasons that do it. We're also flexible to grandchildren. We're flexible to everything because everybody's family is so different nowadays that you need to understand that what your family is like or what your reality is from week to week is not the same as everybody else in the organization,
Yeah.
especially when we have 200 employees. That's 200 different families.
Yeah.
And I would just reiterate, ask your staff, what do they want? What's important to them? You might be surprised. It might be a very, very small thing that could really make a difference. So moving on to number 4, because we're running out of time.
Yes.
We got lots to share here yet for you. So
And remember, if you have questions, just submit them. We'll answer them at the end.
so we're on to find the fun. And the
Yes.
fun guy himself, Luke, continue.
So one of the things that we do at Data is we like to have a lot of culture building events here. This is another one too where you're going to want to poll your employees first because not everybody wants to have a Halloween party. Not everybody wants to get dressed up. So once again, same concept with the work-life balance applies here. Fun doesn't mean the same thing for everybody. That is for sure. And you got to be careful with this one too, because you don't want to create cliques, so to speak, where some people do this fun thing together and they never interact with everybody. So you really got to focus on finding something that's smart, that's fun for everybody at the organization there. And a lot of times for us, what it revolves around is, well, we do know one thing for sure that is and this is where I always start with this one, that is going to be true for everybody, is that the one thing we all have in common at Data is that we all work at Data, right? Might be about the only thing. Very different, and that's true for everybody who's on this. The one thing that all your employees have in common for sure is that they all work at the same company. That being said, you want to find ways, I think, with this to find the fun, celebrate successes that happen at a company level that everybody can be a part of and explain why everybody was involved in making that piece successful. We'll do simple, small things that cost like $10. When we launch a big website, I'll go out and buy a bottle of champagne and we'll cork it right then and there in the middle of the work day. And it's, we'll just pass it around so everybody has that little sip. It's a fun thing. It just gets people excited about it. And then also we take time too, that we get together in person, even though we all work remotely, we get together and we have a regular, once a month, where we'll write down on pieces of paper, very old school for a digital marketing company, things that recognition, and we'll put them in just a big jar and we'll pass them all out and they get spread out and we read them. And a lot of times it's not only things that we're recognizing people for, but we're having fun with it too, and saying, it's a great way to get everybody together in a group and have a good time together in person, but it's all centered around company success and our values. Any comments on that one before we move on?
I'd like to say that some of working on fun, and the reason the quote is on this slide too, is allowing people to find the projects that they really are interested in and they're excited by. So the fun not only is in that extracurricular stuff, it's in the projects you have going too. I have projects that I find really fun, and I'm not going to mention them because I'll get way too much grief, but I really like that type of thing. And I've always gone back to the 3M model down in the Twin Cities, where a lot of their employees are given up to 10% of their time to work on projects that they're invested in. And I think that's another way of
Well, this could also include the volunteering aspect. Again, many employers let their employees volunteer on the clock for those things that they're passionate about, in addition to the projects that Allison talked about.
So as we move forward on to praise and acknowledge, as we said during the early part of when you're recognizing your rock stars, one of the traits they have is that they're very self-directed and they're very self-motivated. And that is truly true. But they need to hear praise and acknowledgement from other people. They need to know that they're on the right path. They need to understand that what they do is appreciated. And it is just a basic human condition to praise and acknowledge and to need that praise and acknowledge from somebody other than yourself. It actually helps them identify and say what I'm doing is correct. So I think it's as much as they are self-directed and self-motivated, you can't underestimate the need for praise and acknowledgement.
Totally agree. And I'm going to stress that last comment that was underneath there. Not only at your annual review, this should be on a regular basis. Again, doesn't have to spend money to do this all the time, but just that word of sharing is critical day in and day out. It again prevents that really positive environment that everybody wants to be a part of.
And I'm going to share a really odd tip. I am an absolute Pinterest fiend. And on Pinterest, you can find an amazing amount of tips and hints on how to recognize employees for free. It does not have to take a lot of money to do this. It's kind words, it's a card on the desk, it's something across your intranet. There's all sorts of ways of doing this without spending a dime. It takes a little bit of time and a little bit of energy. And so if you want a whole bunch of those, go to Pinterest and put that in, and you'll be amazed at what pops up.
That's a great point.
Number 2, clear path. We've alluded to this a little bit today already also, but again, we want to stress the importance of each of our rock stars needs a clear path as to what does their input and their value look like within the organization, and how are they going to continue to grow with additional responsibilities, additional opportunities, additional projects, just involvement. Maybe it's they're on certain committees, whatever it is. Everybody needs a clear path. And that's going to, again, they're going to see the future. If they see the future with your organization, that is going to really improve the chances that they're going to want to stay with you. If they don't see a future with you, then obviously they start to think, is there a better place for me? Can somebody more recognize me or appreciate me, give me that opportunity to grow? So again, it's not that these people are needy, but again, they have a lot to offer. And if you don't embrace that and continue to challenge them, you're going to lose them. And that's what we're trying to minimize or eliminate. So again, specific roadmap for every single rock star on your team. And frankly, I would go as far a single specific roadmap for every single associate, no matter if they don't fall in the rock star category. We have to take care of all of our associates, but again, particularly attention to these rock stars that you just can't afford to lose, and you're going to get increased loyalty if you are doing that for your folks. So, and then number 1 reason, and we have talked about it throughout our entire presentation today, is the importance of culture. Again, if people feel that they're a part of a culture that they believe in, that matches their own personal mission and vision and values, they are going to, again, continue to promote you and be that rock star for your organization. And I particularly love the quote that we put on the side of this one: customers will never love a company until the employees love it first. So just think about all of your employees are ambassadors out representing your company, and hopefully all in the way that you want them to. And so again, if they're disgruntled, if they're not feeling challenged, if they're not feeling like you are paying attention to what their skills are, you don't know what they could be saying about you in the background that could adversely affect your business. So again, you want everybody all on the same song sheet as far as why is your company the place to work. And again, instilling that culture within all of your employees is really the key and the first and foremost aspect to look at within your organization.
And I agree, they're ambassadors. That's exactly how I look at them in so many different ways. 2 weeks ago, we had our company picnic, which was loads of fun given the fact that it was about 40 degrees out. So, but a couple of our retirees came and they said, you know what? We still need to can we buy some more DCI stuff? Because we want to show everybody what a great company DCI was to work for.
Absolutely.
Even though we only spent 45 years there. This was our longest living employee at that point in time.
Only 45 years.
He was with us 45 years, 3 weeks, 2 days. And he is very proud of that fact. And so for his birthday, she came to us and said, do you have any DCI gear? He wants some more DCI gear.
Oh, that's awesome.
Sure. So we handed over some chairs, we handed over whatever. But they are ambassadors, knowing that you were a good place to work. They're going to tell their children, their grandchildren, and that circle and that networking is an amazing effective tool for you, going back to our very first point today of hiring reps.
Absolutely.
One of the things that I want to mention, because this is such, I think this one is probably the most fluffy of them all, as it might seem, at least. But one of the best books I've ever read is called All In. Look it up. It is one of the best books. It's backed in history, and it's all about making sure that your employees are engaged, enabled, and energized. It's their 3E model. I think I've mentioned it in a previous webinar here, but it is by far the best book on culture I have ever read. The authors do a fantastic job of making it a very tangible, real thing and showing how it affects the bottom line. Because we all live in an Amazon world where we need to be delighted,
Right.
and we need to be not only once we make the moment of the purchase, but after the purchase.
That's right.
We need to be delighted, and we need it 2 days, prime. And so make sure that and you can't just force somebody to love your culture in the first week. Nobody's going to do that. One of the first things I say to new hires is, I'm about to go through our values, mission, vision, and everything, and you're not going to believe a single thing I say. And that's totally fair, right? Because we're natural skeptics as humans. And so I tell them that's okay to not believe anything I'm about to say, but just know you're going to start hearing this through our culture. And I want you to be open to hearing these ideas and thoughts. And it takes time.
Absolutely. So as we've talked about, invest in your rock stars. You have attracted them to your company. Now you want to make sure that they can continue to grow as well as produce results for you for your bottom line. So again, as we started this whole process, we don't want to talk about retention when somebody's getting ready to leave or when they already have left. And so again, we need to be front and forward with this. And again, if you're feeding their passion, really continuing to challenge them, they are going to be with you for the long haul. And again, they're going to be staying within your organization. So you are retaining them, you're retaining their immense knowledge, and again, building a team that's going to grow your business, which obviously is what we all want to do. So with that, we have about 5 minutes. And so we're flipping over here. If there's any questions that you have, we want to address those for you. So.
Okay, let's just try to cherry pick so many. Gail or
now, as far as relocation, leaving due to relocation, yes, that's not something you have a lot of control over. But again, how can you help them find that new opportunity, or if they already have it, help engage them in their new community if they are obviously moving further away, if you've got connectors. Again, we're all in this together. I always tell people, I mean, if Luke doesn't have an opportunity for somebody of a candidate that he's spoken to, he's going to share it with Allison or somebody else that might be a great fit. Again, we can't be only thinking about our own company. We need to be thinking about that person individually and where would be the best fit. So helping them in any way we can, I think, is a good thing to always keep in mind.
And in that regard, they're always ambassadors. We had someone who moved away because she was following somebody else, and left with one of the best exit interviews I've ever had in my whole career, with suggestions of what would have made it easier for her transition when she first started. And we actually implemented, I believe, every single one of her ideas. What's even more fun for that story is she actually was just rehired
Awesome.
after 6 years of being away. So doing those things and paying attention to these people, it's worth your time, it's worth your effort. They will be ambassadors, they will give those referrals to people when they're looking for jobs. But on the flip side, you can still make use of their skills and abilities.
Can you speak to that last question about your customer service training?
Yeah,
I think that's a great question.
I actually contacted St. Cloud Technical and Community College, and my contact is, let me look it up because I just emailed her today. Let me see. Cheryl Brown, so I'll give her by name, at the St. Cloud Technical and Community College, and they will help you develop. And what's interesting about the tech college right now is that they're working with all the other systems within Minnesota State. So if they don't have the training, they can help find the training for you. And I think that has been a remarkable addition to their services. So actually, I contacted St. Cloud Technical and Community College, but the training we're using is going to be coming out of Ridgewater down in Hutchinson. So we now have a bigger network of skills and abilities that we can tap into when we need this type of training.
Well, and again, it speaks to the whole, you're much more powerful as you're working as a collaborative effort. This Cheryl Brown heads up the customized training area, or leads in, it's partner of that customized training. And again, I think more of the education institutions are finding opportunity where they can really help our employers is to provide some of these specific one-on trainings or models that can then be replicated to many different companies, just like DCI is utilizing. And so definitely use your resources if you want some ideas. Both St. Cloud State, St. Cloud Technical and Community College, they both do a number of employer-specific training opportunities. And if you want further direction, if Luke wants to flip to the last slide, our contact information is on here and our beautiful faces. So feel free to either email or phone any three of us individually. If we can help with any other information or directions to people, we would love to do so. Were there any other questions on there, Luke, or was that the end of it?
That was it.
Okay.
Unless something new came in, but otherwise stick around. We have that very important poll we'd like to ask, or sorry, the survey at the end of this webinar here. So it'll pop up automatically. So please don't exit out. We'll end the session and you'll be prompted to take that survey. But that's it.
So thank you for taking your lunch hour time with us. We hope you found this to be helpful. We are hopeful that you can take at least a couple of those top 10 ideas and implement them within your organization, maybe in a fresh look or a fresh face. Feel free to reach out to any of us with further questions, and really seriously give us some feedback as to, are these webinars helpful? What type of topics would you like us to address in the coming year? Or if there's other things that you think would be helpful for us to talk about this very important topic of talent and workforce in our challenged work environment, where again, you know, job seekers might be at a minimum, but again, the ones you find, let's take the time to develop them so they can be, again, with you for the long haul, because it's going to help your business as well as, again, the growth of our region. Thank you so very much.
And then the last thing I'd say before we end up here is this, again, will be available online. We'll follow up by the end of the week with this material. And then we've got some great resources here that we have included on the last slide as well. But remember to stick around for that survey. And thank you for attending. Have a great rest of your day.